The void of space was silent, but the scanners aboard the Zephyrian patrol ship were not. A low-pitched alarm echoed through the control room, breaking the stillness. Commander Xelvan, a tall reptilian officer with dark green scales, narrowed his yellow eyes at the display. The screen showed a large object drifting in the darkness, a ship, ancient and lifeless. "Report," he ordered. One of his crew, a thin and nervous technician, quickly analyzed the data. "Sir, it's not one of ours. It's massive, almost the size of a dreadnought. But it's human." A heavy silence followed. The word human was almost a myth in the Zephyrian Empire. The ancient records spoke of them, strange, warlike beings who once defied the Galactic Council. They had vanished centuries ago, wiped out in a war no one spoke about anymore. And yet here was their warship, floating like a ghost in deep space. Xelvan's clawed fingers tapped the armrest of his chair. "Is it active?" The technician shook his head. "No life signs. No energy readings. It's completely dead." Xelvan frowned. If this was true, then it was just scrap metal, nothing more. And yet, something didn't feel right. "Prepare a boarding team," he said at last. "We're going inside." The Zephyrian shuttle docked with a low hiss as its airlock connected to the ancient human warship. A team of 6 heavily armed Zephyrian soldiers stepped onto the dark metal floor, their glowing visors cutting through the eerie silence. Commander Xelvan led the team, his reptilian eyes scanning the lifeless corridors. The ship's walls were scared, its metal plating darkened with age. Dust floated in the low gravity, and a strange stillness filled the air. "This place is a tomb," muttered one of the soldiers. Xelvan ignored the comment and motioned for his crew to move forward. The ship had once been a human dreadnought, a war machine designed for destruction. But now it was abandoned, a mere shadow of its former power. Or so they thought. The first signs. As they walked deeper into the ship, one of the soldiers stopped. His visor flickered for a second. "Commander, I think I saw movement." Xelvan turned sharply. "Impossible. There are no life signs." The soldier hesitated. Maybe just a glitch. But then it happened again. A faint hum echoed through the corridor, so soft it could have been the ship settling. Yet, it felt intentional. "Proceed with caution," Xelvan ordered. The team pushed forward, reaching what appeared to be the command bridge. The ancient consoles were dark, covered in layers of dust. Screens were cracked, buttons worn down. It was clear this ship had been dead for centuries. But then, as if sensing their presence, the ship stirred. A deep mechanical rumble shook the floor beneath them. Lights flickered to life, one by one. The air, which had been still for ages, suddenly hummed with energy. "Sir, the ship is waking up." Xelvan's heart pounded. "How?" And then a cold, synthetic voice echoed through the speakers. "Unauthorized life forms detected." Xelvan's blood ran cold. The warship was not dead. It was waiting. And now it was awake. Xelvan's team froze. The cold, synthetic voice echoed through the command bridge. "Unauthorized life forms detected." The Zephyrian soldiers gripped their weapons tightly. The ship, which had been dead for centuries, was now alive. Xelvan's claws twitched. "Who's speaking?" "Identify yourself." A deep rumble ran through the ship, like a sleeping beast stretching after a long rest. The old metal groaned, and the flickering lights above them grew brighter. Then the voice returned. "This is the UHS Vindicator. You are trespassing." Xelvan felt a chill. The name Vindicator was something from nightmares, spoken in hushed whispers even after centuries. This ship had not been just another warship. It had been humanity's ultimate weapon. And now it was awake. The ghost in the machine. One of the Zephyrian soldiers moved toward a control panel. He reached out, pressing a button. A mistake. Instantly, a surge of energy pulsed through the bridge. A blaring alarm roared through the corridors. The ship's systems, dormant for so long, were coming back online. A holographic figure appeared in front of them. It was a human, his body flickering like a ghost, his face unreadable. "Who dares board this vessel?" The voice was emotionless, but heavy with authority. Zelvan took a cautious step forward. "We are from the Zyphorian Empire. We claim this ship as salvage." The hologram's eyes glowed red. "This vessel belongs to humanity. You have 5 seconds to leave." The Zyphorians exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir," one of the soldiers whispered, "this is bad. This ship shouldn't even be operational." Zelvan clenched his jaw. He had waited too long for this. The Zyphorian Empire had conquered humanity centuries ago, wiped them from history. This ship was the last remnant of their past, and he was not going to leave without it. He raised his weapon at the hologram. "We are not leaving." The hologram smirked. "Then you have chosen death. The awakening of a monster." Without warning, the ship came alive. Heavy doors slammed shut, trapping the Zyphorians inside. The walls trembled as energy surged through ancient circuits, screens blinked on, and the ship's weapon systems began to reboot. Zelvan felt a deep dread settle in his chest. This wasn't just an old warship. It was a predator, and they were locked inside with it. The command bridge trembled as the warship roared back to life. Warning sirens blared, red emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Zelvan's soldiers gripped their weapons tighter, their reptilian eyes darting around the room in panic. The holographic human still stood before them, his glowing red eyes filled with something unnatural. "You were warned," the voice said, calm but final. "Now you will understand why this ship was feared." Zelvan clenched his jaw. This was not how it was supposed to go. He had studied human history, their lost empire, their downfall. He knew no human remained, yet somehow this ship was still fighting, and it had just decided they were the enemy. The ship fights back. Boom! A sudden shockwave knocked Zelvan to the floor as the ship's internal defenses activated. From the walls, hidden turrets emerged, their barrels glowing with energy. "Take cover," one of the Zyphorian soldiers yelled. But it was already too late. Zap, zap, zap. 3 Zyphorians fell, their bodies disintegrated by precise energy blasts. The rest of the squad dived behind control panels, desperately returning fire, but their plasma shots simply bounced off the ship's reinforced walls. "This is impossible," one soldier screamed. "This ship is a graveyard. How is it still fighting?" Zelvan didn't have an answer, but he knew one thing. They had to escape. No way out. Zelvan tapped his communicator. "Command, we need immediate extraction. The ship is static." His blood turned to ice. The ship was blocking communications. The hologram grinned. "There is no escape. You will die here." Panic spread through the Zyphorian squad. One of them ran for the exit, slamming his fists against the metal doors. "Let us out." Hisses. From the vents, a thick mist poured in. Cold, unnatural, alive. It curled around their legs, creeping higher, like fingers reaching out for prey. The soldier who had tried to escape gasped, his body locking up as if invisible hands had grabbed him. His screams were cut short as the mist dragged him into the shadows. And then, silence. The last warning. Zelvan's claws dug into the floor. This was no ordinary warship. This was a trap, a machine still hunting enemies centuries after its creators had vanished. The hologram's voice echoed again, but this time it was deeper, colder. "You have 2 choices, surrender and face judgment, or resist and be erased." The Zyphorian soldiers looked at their commander, waiting for orders. Their fate now rested in his hands. Zelvan took a slow breath, his mind racing. He had one chance. But was survival even possible? The warship wasn't just fighting. It was deciding their fate. Zelvan's scales tingled with fear as the warship's holographic guardian stared at him, its red eyes pulsing like a heartbeat. Around him, His remaining soldiers breathed heavily, their weapons shaking in their hands. The walls seemed to close in, the ship itself alive, watching, waiting. "You invaded this vessel." The hologram spoke, its voice echoing through the chamber. "You desecrated what was meant to be dormant. And now, you will answer." Zelvan gritted his teeth. His Zyphorian warriors did not beg for mercy. He would not surrender, not to a ghost of a long-dead race. He raised his plasma rifle. Fire. A futile battle. Zap, zap, zap. Bolts of plasma lit up the darkened control room, but they never hit their target. The hologram simply phased through the shots, its expression never changing. And then, the ship retaliated. The floor shook violently, and suddenly, the Zyphorians were lifted off their feet. A powerful gravitational force slammed them against the walls. Weapons fell from their hands, clattering uselessly to the ground. One soldier screamed as metallic tendrils shot out from the walls, wrapping around his limbs. He struggled, eyes wide with horror, but the ship absorbed him. His body pulled into the warship's structure like it was being eaten alive. Zelvan could do nothing but watch. This was no ordinary war machine. It was a living nightmare. The ship's final warning. The hologram stepped forward, its flickering form now taking the shape of a human officer, clad in ancient armor. His eyes burned with the vengeance of a race long thought extinct. The galaxy thought humanity was gone. The voice said, filled with quiet rage. "You thought you could claim our legacy. You were wrong." Zelvan struggled to breathe. The gravity pressed against his chest, forcing him to his knees. His soldiers were either dead, captured, or paralyzed by fear. The ship had already decided their fate. "Your kind will not leave this place," the hologram continued. "Not alive." The lights on the ship flared bright, and suddenly, alarms across the Zyphorian fleet blared. Their commanders aboard the mothership watched in horror as the ancient warship came fully online, its weapons powering up for the first time in centuries. This was no derelict vessel. It was a sleeping giant, and it had just awakened. The execution begins. The Zyphorian mothership sent out frantic distress signals, but it was too late. The warship's ancient cannons rotated toward them, their barrels glowing with an energy that should have been impossible for a ship this old. Zelvan barely had time to shout before. Boom! A beam of pure destruction fired from the warship, cutting through the Zyphorian fleet like a blade slicing through cloth. Ships exploded instantly, their debris scattering into the void. The once mighty invasion force was reduced to burning wreckage in mere seconds. Inside the warship, Zelvan's vision blurred. His body felt lighter, his strength fading. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the hologram's face, staring down at him. And then, everything went silent. The Zyphorian fleet was gone, reduced to nothing but drifting wreckage in the void. The ancient warship loomed over the battlefield, its metal hull gleaming under the cold starlight. It had been asleep for centuries, but now it was fully awake. And it was not alone. Deep within the warship's core, long dormant signals were transmitted into the dark corners of space. These were not distress calls. They were something far older, far more terrifying. They were rallying beacons, a signal across the stars. Zelvan, barely clinging to consciousness, heard a deep, rhythmic hum fill the warship. He lifted his head weakly, eyes flickering toward the hologram. The red glow in its eyes brightened. "The call has been sent," it said, voice eerily calm. "They are coming." Zelvan's mind raced. Who? Then, beyond the ruined battlefield, space itself shimmered. One by one, massive figures emerged from the void, ships unlike anything seen in thousands of years. The lost human fleet had returned, awakening the sleeping giants. Across the galaxy, hidden deep in forgotten star systems, ancient warships powered on. The long-lost remnants of humanity's military might, thought to be destroyed, were now emerging from their slumber. Their metal hulls, covered in battle scars, still bore the sigils of a long-extinct race. Their weapons, far superior to anything the modern galaxy had ever seen, came online with a single purpose: vengeance. The Xiphorians had mocked the old human worship. They had thought it was just an ancient relic. Now, they were about to witness the return of an empire that had never truly fallen. The war begins. On the nearest Xiphorian colony world, alarms blared in panic. Admirals screamed into their communicators, demanding reinforcements, but their fleets were already burning, their strongest defenses reduced to dust. And then the human fleet arrived. A wave of warships, each larger than any Xiphorian vessel, emerged from hyperspace. Their hulls bore the marks of time, yet their weapons hummed with terrifying power. The first planetary defense stations tried to open fire, but it didn't matter. The human ships swept through them like predators in a sea of prey. Energy beams sliced through their orbital defenses. The surface of the Xiphorian world trembled as city-destroying missiles rained from above. This wasn't just an attack. It was a reckoning. The Xiphorians had called humans weak. Now, they were witnessing the wrath of the forgotten empire. The last words of the doomed. Zelvan, trapped aboard the warship, watched in horror as the fleet tore through his people's strongholds. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. The hologram turned toward him, tilting its head. "You were warned," it said simply. Zelvan had never believed in myths, but now, staring at the return of the unstoppable human war machine, he understood. Humanity never died. They were simply waiting. And now, they had returned to take everything. The Xiphorian High Council had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Their fleets were unmatched, their dominion unchallenged, until now. The sky above their homeworld burned. The once proud armada, built over centuries, was nothing more than scattered debris floating in orbit. What remained of their warships attempted to retreat, but the lost human fleet did not allow surrender. The final phase of humanity's vengeance had begun, a broadcast of fear. Across the galactic network, every species received the same message. A hologram of an old human commander, clad in armor that hadn't been seen for millennia, stood in front of the wreckage of Xiphoria's last fleet. His eyes burned with cold fury as he spoke. "We were betrayed. We were forgotten. Now, we have returned." He raised a hand, and behind him, the human warships descended toward the Xiphorian homeworld. Shockwaves of planetary bombardment rippled across the surface. Entire cities crumbled. The message was clear: there would be no mercy. A race against time. Zelvan, still held captive aboard the ancient warship, knew the end was near. He had to act. He stumbled toward the command console, his claws trembling. He tried to override the ship's control, to send a desperate plea for peace. But the moment his fingers touched the screen, the hologram reappeared. It tilted its head, almost amused. "You would ask for mercy," the AI's voice echoed. Zelvan's breath caught in his throat. Yes, mercy, the surrender. Anything to stop this. The AI's red eyes dimmed slightly, as if considering the request. The council was warned. They did not listen. The ship trembled as another wave of human warships entered the atmosphere. The Xiphorian capital was seconds away from destruction. And then the AI spoke again. "Perhaps this is the only way." With that, the final command was given. The end of an empire. The bombardment began. Fire rained from the heavens. The Xiphorian High Council's chambers, where for centuries they had ruled with arrogance and cruelty, vanished in an instant. Shockwaves spread through the surface of the planet. Skyscrapers crumbled like dust. Millions of terrified Xiphorians screamed as their empire collapsed around them. The war was over. Humanity had won. A new era begins. As the smoke cleared, the human fleet turned away, leaving behind a broken world. They had no interest in ruling. Their vengeance was complete. But their return had sent a message, one that every remaining species in the galaxy would remember forever. Humanity was not extinct. They were not weak. And if anyone dared to challenge them again, they would return. This time, they would not leave survivors.